Airlines Confidential with Scott McCartney is made possible with support from RTX, Collins Aerospace, Pratt & Whitney, and Raytheon, connecting and protecting our world. Visit RTX.com. Infinity Flight, the leader in Cadet Academy flight training programs. InfinityFlight.com. Ontario International Airport in Southern California. SoCal, so easy. FlyOntario.com. And by Cirium, the world's most trusted source of aviation analytics. Cirium.com. We also welcome your business's support. Contact us at airlinesconfidential.com.
Welcome to a new year of Airlines Confidential. I'm Scott McCartney, wishing everyone a happy and healthy, safe and secure, productive and prosperous 2026. This show, number 319 for Airlines Confidential, is a new year for me as well, the start of my fourth year co-hosting the podcast. So as we begin a new year, a toast to the founders, Ben Baldanza of blessed memory, and Charlie Shapiro, who continues to produce this podcast with great devotion and great skill. And a toast, too, to the team of co-hosts who bring insights and wit and wisdom to this show every week. We all miss Ben so much, and we continue very much to honor him. I think he would be very proud of how Airlines Confidential continues to fill a need in the airline business and continues to educate everyone from top executives to frontline employees to students excited about this dynamic and fascinating industry. Henry Harteveldt, who always brings Fortress Hub co-host amounts of wit and wisdom to Airlines Confidential, is back with me this week. Welcome back, Henry, and Happy New Year.
Thank you, Scott. Hello, everyone, and Happy New Year to all. Glad to be back with you. And Scott, I share your sentiment, that toast to Ben. And my thanks also to Charlie. He is not only an outstanding producer, but he is just a super nice, super considerate person. As we go into the new year, we should all learn from Charlie to be as kind and considerate to others as he is to us.
Oh, well said. And for longtime listeners, for newer listeners, he's the voice you first hear as the podcast opens.
Right. Well, we're starting the new year with a lot of new news. Many of us may take breaks during the holiday. Airlines and aviation do not. And so we're going to do some wrap up for last year, including a terrific interview with Jeremy Bowen, the CEO of Cirium. Cirium has just published its 2025 On-Time Performance Awards for both airlines and airports. And there's some really interesting surprises that I think our listeners will be interested in learning more about. It's a fun discussion because certainly, Scott, you and I are involved in this report as advisory board members, but the folks at Cirium crunched this data. And as you will hear, sometimes the results come down to tenths or hundredths of percentage points in differences of performance. Yeah. We, as an advisory board, meet twice a year with Cirium to discuss the report, to discuss the data, the formulas, what we should be thinking about, how the awards need to be involved, how the reporting needs to be improved, and so on. I thought we might start the podcast today, though, with some news, and let's take a look at how airlines fared during the holiday period. It was a challenging holiday because of storms. We had snow in New York, just as travelers were starting to head home for Christmas. A lot of rain here in California, including this weekend, and caught me up last night returning from Palm Springs to San Francisco, and many other challenges. But people traveled and they got home safely. All in all, a record holiday travel season, though I'm not sure if the forecast predictions of 5% more air travelers actually came to pass. We looked at the TSA checkpoint screening data numbers starting Friday, December 19th, which is considered the start of the holiday travel period, through January 1st, which was the latest available as we have gone to press. And the number of people who came through TSA screening for those 14 days was 36.9 million. Now, that is a huge number. It's 37 million people. That's just rounded to round numbers. But that was up only 1.5% from the same 14 days of the previous year. So up, but perhaps not as far up as initially thought. Now, one aspect to that is perhaps airlines were trying to hold out for higher airfares this year. And so if they were trying to get higher fares and improve their yield performance, while that's good for airlines and can help their fourth quarter in a very challenging year, it also may have priced some people out of the market. And at least in the US, we know that not everyone is doing financially as well as they would like to be doing. We have heard lots discussed about affordability crises in this country on everything from day-to-day items to travel and more. And so that certainly may have had a factor. Now, I will just share that traveling from San Francisco International to Palm Springs and back on Alaska Airlines was not a good experience for me this year because of delays and because, frankly, of Alaska's very poor handling of these delays. Bad weather happens. Airlines can prepare for it, but how airlines execute on it certainly affects traveler perception. And I have said for a long time that disruptions are marketing opportunities for airlines. There are tech companies out there, including Plan 3 and Vamos, that can help airlines better manage these disruptions and help their employees do a better job for their customers. But I have to tell you, Alaska failed in some very fundamental ways. No communication from the airline, being told far after scheduled boarding times that the flight would be delayed, inconsistent information being presented to not just the passenger, but to the employees themselves, all leads to a frustrating experience. I know this is not what the folks at Alaska Airlines want, and I also respect that on my flights, they were operated by SkyWest, so there was a degree of separation from the Alaska Airlines mothership. But I would certainly say that when travel is disrupted, airlines, there are ways to do things better, much better than you think. Technology can be your friend here. It can aid your employees. It can aid your customers. And there is a lot of room for improvement.
Wow, not what I expected. By reputation, you'd expect more from Alaska, but I think that's fascinating. Look, the fact that it was SkyWest, that's a 20-year-old excuse. There's no reason why, if you bought an Alaska Airlines ticket, you didn't buy a SkyWest ticket. No reason at all why Alaska shouldn't be expecting more out of SkyWest or to have a more seamless experience. And I don't know. It'd be interesting to watch Alaska this year. Often airlines that go through mergers have operational challenges, and so maybe that's, who knows? You can't make much out of one flight, but that's
no, you can't. And you're right. This is a longstanding relationship between Alaska and SkyWest. And I'm also keenly aware that when bad weather hits major airports, for example, San Francisco International, it's the short-haul, so-called commuter type runs that often operated by regional aircraft that are the first to be canceled or delayed in order to protect the integrity of long-haul international flights, transcon flights, and mainline flights to larger markets.
Sure, yeah.
But that's why managing the disruption is so important. And in this case, there's no excuse for Alaska not sending messaging out to customers. There's no excuse for the airline's app not to have updated. And by the way, Alaska has had a series of highly publicized IT failures, which have affected its website and mobile app. There's no excuse for different times being presented for boarding and departure on flight information screens at the airport, on customer-facing technology, and on employee-facing screens, and so on. All of that is controllable and manageable by the airline.
Well, Henry, I'll see your Alaska mismanagement and raise you with my own American Airlines mismanagement experience. Let me just say, I have a general aversion of talking about my own personal travel issues, but this one was so extreme and kind of fascinating how poorly, exactly what you were talking about lack of communication and everything, that I do feel like I should mention it. There were 4 of us traveling from Philadelphia to Dallas Fort Worth. That's a pretty simple trip, right? American has a bunch of flights because it's hub to hub for them. We booked a flight on a 787-9 for Saturday evening. Should have been easy. The plane came to Philly on Friday afternoon from Dallas and then sat for more than 24 hours before we were supposed to go. Turns out there were multiple mechanical issues on that 9-year-old airplane. American even taxied it around the Philadelphia airport in the middle of the night before our flight, trying to make sure it was airworthy, and no such luck. So 6:30 p.m. departure time, that approach, we're all there ready to go. The airplane's there, the crew's there. The flight was delayed to 7:30. No big deal. We found out about it through a change on the app. Really no announcements or anything in the gate area. And then as 7:30 p.m. approached and it was getting ready to board, the flight was delayed until 7 a.m. Again, no announcement, no communication, just an update on the AA app and the flight trackers I use. I had to stand in line to ask a question of what the heck is going on. That just shouldn't happen. I saw the crew heading out. I jumped into line. I booked hotel rooms instantly for my family. The line swelled down the hallway, as you can imagine. Fully booked flight for 285 passengers suddenly stranded. At one point, the gate agents started yelling at people that they didn't need to wait in line because hotel vouchers would be sent to their phones. There were no hotel vouchers. None of us received any kind of hotel voucher to our phone. That was mistaken. We asked about getting our luggage returned for the overnight stay, and Americans said no, couldn't do that. They were keeping the luggage for the morning flight. Interesting thing. This had happened to me in Madrid years and years ago, and America did return the luggage. Throw it on the belt, let people pick it up, take it to the hotel with them. American bussed us to a hotel with that thing, and then you bring your luggage back in the morning and you check it, and you have your pajamas and everything else. But no luggage this time, no hotel vouchers. And I just have to say, is like you, the thing that disturbed me the most was the lack of communication from American. Both the people at the airport, who just seemed like this was just another, delay, cancellation. They were so used to this. The rest of us weren't. No explanation for if it was a maintenance issue, what the issues were. No, $50 vouchers sent to you to say we're sorry, or 1,000 miles for your trouble, or anything. Nothing. My family ended up on the same hotel van as the captain and the first officer of the stricken flight. My kids are laughing at me. Can't wait to talk to her. Can't wait to talk to her. So, no, I couldn't. And I did talk to the captain, and I learned there were multiple maintenance issues. Nothing terribly serious, but multiple maintenance issues. So we set our alarms to get on the 5:30 a.m. hotel shuttle. At 3 a.m., I was basically up all night. The American app pushed that the 7 a.m. departure was now 11 a.m. I had asked a friend at American somewhere along the way, what the heck was going on with this flight? And why didn't they have a spare airplane or a way to delay other trips and get a plane for this simple Dallas run? And by the way, the return, because the plane is supposed to come back from Dallas to Philly. So there are people in Dallas affected by this. In American's defense, the storm didn't disrupt Philly much. Philly weather was fine, but it did whack New York. So extra capacity may have already been used because of the New York situation. In addition, it's holiday period. There are hardly any seats available to reaccommodate people. We ended up bailing on that flight. Two of us got on a Cincinnati flight and connected to a Dallas flight. The other two went through Raleigh-Durham, same thing. Our bags arrived too, all in all, eventually to DFW. Three of them, I think, made it on the flights that we were on. A fourth one came on a separate Dallas flight. It was we were very appreciative of how American got the bags to us in Dallas. And it was all simply a 24-hour adventure. Interestingly, our original flight kept getting delayed by 4 hours rather than canceled. 7 a.m. became 11, which became 3 p.m. It finally departed at 5:15 p.m. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure that there was anybody left to be on it. Clearly, I guess there were. But what's normally a 3.5 hour trip took that plane 5 hours. So there may have been other issues with it. The regularly scheduled version of Flight 3010 for that Sunday, we were on the Saturday flight. The Sunday flight departed at its normal 6:30 p.m. time. So you had two 787 wide bodies arriving from Philadelphia at about the same time in Dallas. It all seemed bizarre. And when I talked to a friend at American, everybody agreed. They'd never seen anything like this. So why am I telling this story? Because I think it shows how much work American has ahead of it if it wants to be more reliable. This one example, it just seemed like there needs to be cultural change, needs to be dramatic change in maintenance. We'll talk with Jez about preventative maintenance and flying older airplanes and things like that. This is not a particularly old airplane, but maybe it's coming up for its D check, and it's obviously got issues that are affecting the operation. There have to be changes in American's operation. There have to be changes in technology and employee customer service. The lack of communication was just, you hear all the time about people getting thank yous and apologies and vouchers and whatever from airlines. It's not hard to do, but there was nothing. And frontline employees were so used to this stuff that they just seemed uncaring. No urgency, no concern for the customers, literally zero information to offer. So anyway, travel at the holidays is tough. We went to Philadelphia because I have a daughter who really hates to travel at the holidays, and this kind of reaffirmed her hatred of travel at the holidays, even though she was the one who was not on the flight with us. Anyway, I kept hearing Delta CEO Richard Anderson in my ear from our podcast interview, where he talked about how important preventative maintenance was to avoid lots of delays and cancellations, and how he'd much rather spend $2 million doing extra maintenance on 767s if you're having a problem with them, rather than on an advertising campaign or anything else. And I was just shocked that there wasn't a more creative solution for that delay. American's got 1,000 mainline aircraft. You're telling me you can't find one for a 3-hour hub-to-hub leg? Was everything really scheduled that tightly? Were there so many mechanical and weather issues that your extra capacity you planned for the holidays was used up by December 27th? So many questions, but I don't know. Any thoughts?
Well, Scott, what happened to you clearly seems extraordinary. And I am surprised that somehow American wasn't able to recover better because, as you mentioned, this is a hub-to-hub flight. And hub-to-hub flights usually do get priority for reprotection. And a wide-body aircraft such as a 787, which American uses on long-haul flights, I'm doubly surprised that they couldn't find another aircraft to fly to Philadelphia to operate that flight to Dallas-Fort Worth to then protect wherever it was going. Because remember, there are all these people waiting at Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport for their plane to take them to wherever, and downline from that. And with how everything is interconnected in airline scheduling and networks, we know that your disruption obviously affected multiple flights elsewhere in the American Airlines system. And it reminds me of of a delay that I experienced in November when the government shutdown was on, flying from San Francisco to Dallas Fort Worth on American, when a mechanical problem was discovered during the pilot walk around of our aircraft to take us to Dallas Fort Worth. And we were delayed 7 hours. The gate agent at San Francisco approached a meltdown situation. She really almost could not seem to handle it. I was surprised that so many people were waiting in line because, to American's credit, you could do rebooking through the app. And I don't know if people just didn't know this. Frankly, the agent didn't do a good enough job announcing that, or if they didn't like what was presented, or whatever the reasons were. American did not do a good job managing it. Now, I'm lucky. I live 17 minutes from San Francisco International Airport. So I was able to go home, fix myself some lunch, take care of a few things around the house, return to the airport, and it was okay. It was inconvenient, but it was not terrible. But American did not push any meal vouchers to us. They did not make any accommodation for us. They didn't say, hey, here's a discounted pass to the Admirals Club at San Francisco Airport. Nothing. Again, disruptions can be marketing opportunities. Safety is paramount. No one's questioning that. But we can and need to, as an industry, do a better job of managing irregular operations for the traveler. And I agree with Richard Anderson. Having done advertising, by the way, the best advertisement you have as an airline is when someone says, this airline operates reliably. I fly it all the time. You should too. Now, American has made other news, good news. And I keep hearing Maya Liebman in my mind as we talk about American stock.
Yes.
American. Well, I've got some things to celebrate about American Airlines. It has announced that it will add about 100 more flights a day to its Chicago O'Hare hub for spring travel and continuing into the summer. And I like this. American is showing it intends to fight to hold on to its hub in Chicago, where it has been challenged by United. American will have 30% more flights in Chicago for spring 2026 than it had last year. I think this is going to be an interesting space to watch. American is still going to trail United, but by far less than they were. I think a year ago, looking at 2025, American was roughly 30% below United in capacity at O'Hare. And this year, they will be somewhere between 17% and 18% below United. So they are clawing their way back. And American is acting quickly. One, they are starting to get more 737 MAX jets delivered from Boeing. And that's good news because, again, it shows that Boeing has its act together as well, and American is benefiting from it. Two, American wants to make sure that they're able to capitalize on strong spring travel demand. So I give them credit for implementing these flights soon. But there's another reason why American is doing this at O'Hare. Every year, the Chicago Department of Aviation evaluates how many gates it's going to allocate based on aircraft operations, seats, passenger boardings, and more. And that starts in February of each year. So American wants to get these flights into the schedule starting in February so that they get credit. You'll recall that while they did buy 2 gates from Spirit out of bankruptcy, they lost several gates to United last year. And American, I think, earnestly wants to get those back. American also has said it's going to address some of the operational challenges it has seen at its Dallas-Fort Worth hub by smoothing down some of the hub peaks and increasing block times. American is going to go to 13 banks of flights at DFW. And I spoke with someone at American about this. I asked, are these rolling banks, as some other airlines have done? And I was told, no, these are definitely defined banks. And you look at the Cirium data, and again, it shows that these are indeed true banks. So they're increasing from 9 to 13 banks of flights a day. That is de-peaking some of the largest banks. It's going to mean actually that there will be more connecting opportunities for passengers through Dallas, and that may not have been possible before. But American acknowledges that in some cases, it may mean slightly longer layover times for passengers between their arrival and departure flights. Now, we all know that Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport is not the best designed airport as a hub from a terminal standpoint. So more time is a good thing if you are running, and I remember doing plenty of connections from terminal C to terminal B, or D to A, or A to C, et cetera, et cetera. So getting an extra few minutes is not necessarily a bad thing. And, it importantly, I think, will take some of the stress off of American's DFW operation and the airport itself. And by the way, American is adding more gates at Terminal C and D. They got what they call these stinger additions that are going to stretch out from those two terminals, much like they have one at Terminal B. And that will give American more gating capacity. And so I'm looking forward to seeing if that works.
Plus, down the road, Terminal F will come online.
Yes,
in 3 years or so. It's interesting. I think the sort of semi de-peaking, going from 9 banks to 13 banks, and smoothing out the biggest capacity. Sometimes at DFW there is a Congo line of jets if there's a thunderstorm or something, waiting to take off, waiting for gates. If you max out the operation, you end up diverting flights to Austin when there's a thunderstorm because there's no capacity on the ground at DFW, that kind of thing. So I think it makes a whole lot of sense, and also gives them room to grow. It'd be interesting to see how it works out. Chicago is also so fascinating. I do think American needs to get back to solid, strong number 2. They're not going to overtake United as number 1, but they have to you have to make it clear to United that they're staying, that they're going to fight, and that they can sustain a big enough operation in Chicago to make it worth their while. Because I think United and Scott Kirby sensed a lot of weakness there, and so by putting the stake back in the ground and saying no, we're here to stay in Chicago, that'll make a difference. The other thing about it, Henry, that I think is so fascinating is that this may all reflect ideas from the new chief commercial officer, Nat Pieper. Nat has a lot of experience at Northwest, Delta, and Alaska, plus is the CEO of One World. He got to see how lots of airlines around the world do it. And I think maybe we're starting to see Nat Pieper's influence on American. So all interesting stuff to watch. Well, Henry, Spirit Airlines had a lot of pre-holiday drama, too, when it came to, in its case, meeting creditor requirements by December 13th for drawing down $100 million in financing that it needed. As listeners recall, Spirit then struck an amended agreement with creditors to get $50 million of that borrowing right away and keep flying through the holidays. It obviously didn't meet the creditor requirements for the full $100 million draw on December 13th. The remaining $50 million will come if Spirit meets new requirements. There was speculation that a deal with Frontier Airlines might come before the end of the year. Obviously, that didn't happen. I don't think there was anything magical about the end of the year with this. And I still think a deal with Frontier will happen. That is the best outcome for Spirit in terms of maximizing the value of the franchise and keeping as much of it flying as possible. But perhaps before that, Spirit may face another crisis soon if it keeps burning through cash at a rate of more than $50 million a month. In the month of November, you look at the report that Spirit filed with the bankruptcy court, Spirit had an operating loss of $72.7 million in November.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like everyone watching what's happening with Spirit. Will they be able to survive or choose to survive as an independent airline? Will there be a merger? Whether it's with Frontier or anyone else, or simply a sale of assets. And I can understand, by the way, if an airline, again, whether Frontier or someone else, says there are assets that Spirit has. Like we just saw American acquire 2 O'Hare gates from Spirit. Some airline may say they would like a hangar facility, aircraft, whatever. So maybe a merger isn't in the offing. I will say, though, that there was a lot of drama created a few weeks ago when it was speculated that Spirit might shut down within the course of a weekend. This was before Spirit announced that they got the funding. And I actually checked with someone at Spirit who told me that they did not have a shutdown plan. And I have to say, there is something that stinks about that rumor that circulated, not the reporting around it, but the rumor itself. I think there are some airlines, and one airline in particular, that very much wants to see Spirit go away. And that airline is doing all it can to engineer Spirit's demise. And I think that's rotten. We've seen these dirty tricks.
You care to name that airline that begins with a U?
Oh, I don't think you need to really name that airline.
Okay.
But I've been in this industry long enough to see dirty tricks played between airlines, and that's not what the spirit of fair business is about. And some will say, well, anything that's legal is done. And some of this I do question the legality of. But I think that one thing we have to remember about the budget airlines, they are the price leaders. They help make air travel affordable for more people. They employ thousands and thousands of people as businesses. They contribute to their communities. So, I do hope that Spirit will be able to make it. I do hope that they can turn around. If they can't, then I hope that there is a reasonable offer on the table for the airline. And importantly, I hope that whatever that offer is includes employment for as many of the Spirit employees as possible. Now, moving on, a few weeks ago, at the beginning of December, I had the privilege of attending the CAPA Airlines Leader Conference in Lisbon, Portugal. I moderated 2 different panels. And the unique thing about the CAPA Leaders Conference is it brings together CEOs and other C-level executives for a few days, along with others in management and executive roles, vendors, and more. The interesting thing about this conference is, unfortunately, it took place while a general strike was called in Portugal. The conference itself produced some really great insights. For example, sustainability is hugely important to airlines. And I had the chance to talk with people from Eurocontrol, Airlines for Europe, and also airlines themselves on a panel about the importance of sustainability. And one thing they have all said is that they're frustrated with the lack of government support for SAF research and production, for subsidies to help bring SAF costs down to more reasonable prices. They believe that some of the goals that have been established by trade groups, such as IATA and the European Airline Trade Group, may be too aggressive. They're working to do their best to reach that. But one thing that came up in the conversation is climate change, and not just sustainability and zero emissions, but how climate change is affecting airline operations. Airlines are having to deal with more major bad weather events more often. Those events can be more intense. Their maintenance people are telling executives that some aircraft are requiring more frequent repair work or preventative maintenance to ensure that everything is in the best working order because of some of the severity of some of the turbulence that aircraft are encountering. The delays that are being created because of disruption to flights and so on and so forth. Overall, the mood at the conference, aside from the strike, which by the way, meant that more than 20 speakers unfortunately couldn't get to Lisbon, was positive. Airline executives are optimistic about 2026. They believe it will be a good year. They believe that they are seeing people prioritize travel in their discretionary income, but they've all said the same thing. They're very concerned about how sensitive people are right now to spending money, how so many people have less discretionary income to spend, how price shopping is more intense. So while we hear a lot about premium leisure demand, for example, there are still a lot of people who are looking for deals, and airlines are doing their best to satisfy that demand. There's a lot of frustration about the patchwork of regulations that exist between countries, even within a region. Airline executives would like to see some of that smoothed out and harmonized. And there was a lot of discussion about the challenges of the tariffs and the trade wars that have come about in the U.S. and affecting demand from Europe to the U.S. So, while it was overall a fascinating conference and an interesting conference and a positive conference, reality was there. And I think as we look at 2026, I share the opinions of the executives. I think it's going to be overall a good year for the industry, but it's too soon to say whether it will be very good. And I don't know that it'll necessarily be great.
That's a fascinating and I think prescient look at the year ahead. I would totally agree. It, looks like it's going to be a good year, but reality may get in the way. As often in this industry, you never really know what's going to affect you, but something's going to affect you because things change in the world, and it always affects airlines. So thank you for that, Henry. Very interesting.
You're welcome.
Let's take a moment to thank our sponsors for making this podcast possible. Thanks to longtime sponsor RTX. RTX believes no challenge is too great, no question too big, no answer out of reach. That's why RTX never stops striving. The RTX global team works across Collins Aerospace, Pratt & Whitney, and Raytheon to inspire, innovate, and drive progress for generations to come. RTX pushes the boundaries of known science and finds new ways to connect and protect our world. Visit rtx.com to learn more. In addition, thanks to Infinity Flight Academy, the leader in cadet academy training programs, for helping us bring the podcast to you. Whether you're looking to build a custom pipeline or strengthen your existing cadet program, Infinity Flight Academy delivers consistent airline-ready results. And for those of you listening who have always dreamed of flying or know someone who has, Infinity Flight has trained thousands of students, many now flying for major airlines around the world. Learn more at infinityflight.com. Infinity Flight Academy, where future airline pilots take off.
We'd also like to add our thanks, as always, to Cirium for helping to make this podcast possible. Cirium offers the most accurate and precise data and analytics to enable airlines to optimize planning, operations, and passenger services. The right intelligence drives operational efficiencies, enables you to predict market shifts, and helps airlines respond quickly to maximize revenue, manage costs, and seize commercial opportunities. For more information, please visit cirium.com. We'd also like to extend our thanks to Ontario International Airport for its ongoing support. Ontario International Airport is celebrating a decade of local control. Thanks to public support, the local community reclaimed ONT, revived it as a vital gateway in Southern California, and ensured the airport is ready to soar even higher in the years to come. Visit flyontario.com/10 to learn the story about Ontario's independence and find out how you can join the year-long celebration of how a decade of local control has turned ONT into one of California's fastest growing and most economical airports. And speaking of ONT, just a quick shout out to the folks there. They are approaching 100,000 people in their registered visitor pass program. It shows that people really do want to go to the gates to meet their incoming family members or see them off. And it's good, obviously, for the airport vendors. So congratulations to ONT on that successful program, too.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And several airports are doing that, but 100,000 registered users at ONT, that's a big number. It's really cool. And I love that they're doing it, but I love that the people really want to go inside security and meet and greet or say goodbye. It's fascinating. All right, let's bring in Jez Bowen, the CEO of Cirium, to talk about which airlines were the most punctual last year. Cirium CEO Jeremy Bowen is a familiar voice to Airlines Confidential listeners, and we are thrilled to welcome him back again to talk about Cirium's 2025 Airline and Airport Performance Report. Jez became CEO of the aviation analytics company in 2019 as Cirium rebranded from Flight Global and expanded its data portfolio significantly with the acquisitions of DO, FlightStats, Ascend, and Innovata. At the same time, he led the divestment of its legacy publishing business, Flight Global. Jez has been in the data and analytics world all his career. He joins us today from London. Happy New Year, Jez, and congratulations on another annual performance report filled with interesting insights and results.
Thank you very much, Scott. Hi, Henry, and Happy New Year to both of you as well.
Great to have you with us. So let's start with the data itself. I think listeners would be interested to hear how Cirium collects data on each flight, how specific it all gets, and what you can do with the data besides just recording arrival time.
Sure. Well, Scott, you said it just in the introduction, actually. So Cirium is an aviation analytics business. And so in order to create those analytics, we bring in data from all across the aviation ecosystem. There's over 2,000 sources globally. And for our flight data itself, from which we're able to produce the on-time performance figures, we're processing from 600 sources, over 25 million updates every day. And we're bringing those in directly from airline OCCs, from airports, government bodies. We bring them in from the GDSs, air navigation, satellite partners, multiple partners. We bring that all in, we match it together, and then they weave it together to create detailed data about each and every flight. And clients, as well as us producing the on-time performance information, we produce that free of charge each month on our website. And again, we produce our annual review. Our actual clients themselves are using the data for many, many different use cases. And probably one of the most common ones sits within airlines themselves, in airline operations. And they want to understand how they benchmark against their competitors that are flying similar routes. What are their competitors' turn times? How those turn times are affected by the gates they're using or the runways they're landing on? How long does it take to get from the runway to the gate? How they handle disruption? All of these things come in, and then it enables the airline, once they understand how their competitors are handling it, how can they themselves build a better plan? How can they use the data to be more efficient and drive efficiency across their own operation? So we're used on multiple different user cases, all over the world.
Jez, Scott and I are both members of the Cirium On-Time Performance Report Advisory Board. There are a number of airline and airport operation experts on the board, and they are literally folks who live around the world. Tell us what you look to the board for.
It's a great question, Henry. We've been running the on-time performance program now for 17 years. And as you guys both know, you both sit on that board. It's widely respected as a mark of operational excellence, and the airlines and the airports that are represented within those awards, within those programs, they want to be number one. They want to be number one in their categories. They want to tell their passengers, they want to tell their staff that they are the most punctual. And so because it's so highly competitive, and because it's a little bit emotive, and because the differences between the people in the top tens are fractions of percentages, we receive an awful lot of questions from people about how we get the data. And when we tell them how it works, we get an awful lot of suggestions from the industry of how we should change it or how we should treat them differently because they're slightly unique, etc. So the integrity of that program is critical. It's absolutely sacrosanct. And so 3 years ago, we formed the initial advisory board, as you said, made up of independent aviation experts, and we wanted them to provide governance to the program. We meet twice per year. We debate in those meetings any potential changes or any potential upgrades to the program or any algorithm that we want to put into next year's program. We receive the Cirium analyst team. They discuss the updates. We debate it robustly. And then in the board meeting after that, we vote for it. And it's democratically, we either choose to adopt it or reject it. What it does is give us that layer over the top of that trust. And as I said, it gives us that high governance over the program, which means that everyone can trust the data as being absolutely accurate and we're doing the right thing by the industry.
I think it's a fantastic group. I love the meetings. The people there are just so knowledgeable. And the questions are so interesting. I mean, even debating what is a global airline?
Yeah, absolutely.
How many continents do you have to touch to be a global airline? Interesting questions.
Yeah.
All right. So 2025, what kind of year was it overall? Did any regions do particularly better or worse?
So if we look at 2025, there's been much adversity in 2025. And we talk about this a lot every year, that running an on-time operation for an airline is hard at the best of times. We've got weather, we've got strikes, we've got geopolitical situations, conflicts we have to fly around, staff shortage. There are multiple challenges that go on to running an airline, on an on-time airline. And I think 2025, we probably had more adversity than in previous years. So really great to say overall it's been a good year for on-time performance. Overall, in the regions that we measure, we've seen year-on-year improvements in every region. And we measure that by looking at the top 10 within each region, the average on-time performance of those top 10, and then we measure that year on year. So, but particularly strong was Europe and the Middle East and Africa. Both of those up over 3%. They were leading the way, but every single category has shown an increase year on year, which is great to see.
It's encouraging to hear that there's a year-on-year improvement, Jez, because it shows airlines really do take on-time performance seriously. They know that the product we buy as customers is the schedule and the reliability behind it. Among the big airlines, you at Cirium give several awards. One is for the best global airline. And then there is an award called the Platinum Award. They're different. And I'm hoping you could perhaps explain the difference between the two, and as well as share who the winners are for this year.
Sure, absolutely, Henry. So the global category can be drawn, clues in the name, can be drawn from any airline in the world, but it's got some criteria to fit into that category. The first is it's got to fly to a minimum of 3 regions, have a daily service to a minimum of 3 regions. And also it's got to be in the top 10% of passenger airlines for ASKs. So this really is the large global airlines. I'm delighted to say the 2025 winner of the global airlines, again following their figures from 2024, is Aeromexico. They had an OTP of 90%, a fraction over 90% in 2025. And when they won it in 2024, we saw a staggering increase. They increased 9% from 23 to 24 to win it. This year, we've seen them go up again. They've climbed another 3% to break through that 90%. And it's only the second time in that category's history in 17 years that we've had a back-to-back winner, somebody that's won it 2 years in a row. So they've had a terrific job.
And the Platinum Award?
Well, the Platinum Award is interesting. So we introduced this award 5 years ago. It's open to all the airlines that qualify in the global category. And when we look at on-time performance, we obviously use A14. And it's very black and white. We can look at an airline, we can compare 2 airlines, and we know that flight's on time, that flight is, in inverted commas, late. But when you look at the makeup of those global airlines, they're very different. We've got people running highly complex networks. We've got people running multiple destinations. We've got multiple aircraft fleet. We've got lots of different things going on. And so we introduced a new award, the Platinum Award, 5 years ago. And that really looks at the complexity of a network. It does look at OTP. It looks at the volume of passengers that you're flying. And what key thing it does, it looks at how you handle disruption. How are you cancelling, or how are you being able to do your completion factor and keep that high? So we had that in for 4 years in a row. It was won by Delta. And we've got a new winner this year, and that's Qatar. So it's the first time it's come out of North America. And again, Qatar have had a great year.
Very interesting. Very interesting. And congratulations in particular to Aeromexico. I think it's a tremendous achievement, especially when they live at such a congested airport. Mexico City's slot controlled, but still, it can be a tough operating environment at high altitude.
Scott, I absolutely agree. We have to give our hats off to Aeromexico. It was 2021, they had an on-time performance of 70%. So
Yeah.
7 out of 10 of their arrivals were delayed. Over the course of 4 years, they've been able to get that to 9 out of 10 being on time. That really is a great turnaround in those 3 or 4 years. They've done a terrific job.
Yeah, yeah. So this year you added a most improved category for the first time. Tell us about that and who won.
Yeah, well, again, this was something that came out of the advisory board. It was one of the discussions that you two gentlemen were part of. We could see there were airlines and airports that were really making great strides to deliver a better experience for passengers. They might be lower down in the top 10s, but you could see the improvements they were making year on year. So we decided to recognise it in 2025. We did it for the first time. And what was really important on this one is it was important that they had to have a strong benchmark, a strong base that they were coming from in 2024. We didn't want this award to be boom and bust, have a terrible year, turn it around the following year and you win the most improved. So the minimum criteria is that in 2024, every airline had to deliver at least a 70% on-time performance. And then we looked to see who's the most improved. And in third place was Turkish Airlines. They were up 5.8%. In second place was Philippine Airlines. They were up 7%. But number one was Virgin Atlantic, and they were up a very respectable 9.44%. So the inaugural award's been presented to Virgin Atlantic.
I think it's great news to see airlines doing what they can to improve their on-time performance. So I think it's notable for Virgin Atlantic to be the winner, given the congestion that exists at Heathrow, the limitations. It is a 2-runway airport. The London area doesn't always enjoy the best weather. It's highly, highly congested. And so congratulations to the good people at Virgin Atlantic for their success. Jez, you live in London. Scott and I are in the U.S., and the U.S. was definitely a country that had a very challenging year for airlines this year, led by the 43-day government shutdown that we saw during the fall. There were multiple FAA air traffic control breakdowns across the country, especially and most notably at Newark Liberty International Airport. So overall, as you look at the U.S. and perhaps more broadly at North America, including Canada, what did you see in the data as a result of all of these challenges over the past year?
Yeah, Henry, I agree with you. I think when you look at all of the categories, I said that everything's gone up. North America's gone up fractionally. It's gone up by 0.1% year on year, those top 10s. It's probably been the most challenging region globally. And as I said, everyone has the things they need to deal with, but the results are very different this year to how they've been. When you look at the top 10 last year, the gap between number 1 and number 10 was 12%. When you look at the top 10 this year, it's narrowed. The gap's only 8%. Delta Airlines have won it again. They run a good operation. They've won it again, but their performance has gone down by over 2.5%. And interesting, the 2 Canadian airlines in there, Air Canada and WestJet, they're propping up that category. Both of them have seen improvements of around 2%. So it's been a bit of a challenge across the board for the American airlines. The larger ones, United are down, Southwest are down, American Airlines are down, Delta are down. There's been a lot to contend with during 2025 in North America.
We've talked a lot on the podcast about American Airlines, the company, not the country, American Airlines operational struggles, and a lot of attention across the media. American's been trailing Delta and United both financially and in terms of reliability. What do you see in the data for the past year for American? How did they perform?
Well, Scott, they dropped down. They're number 6. They produced an on-time performance of 76.4%. That was down 1.3% on prior year. So they've slipped down. They're number 6. They were number 4 last year. So they have had a challenge. Now, the key thing on there is that the on-time performance is one thing. When you look at their completion factor, it's the lowest of the US airlines. They completed 97.9, which is wow, pretty low compared to everyone else.
Yeah,
they've had some of their own challenges to deal with. It was quite well documented. There was a a fibre optic cable that was cut through at DFW. That was 700 flights cancelled in, I think it was September this year, as well as contending with all the other North American stuff that everyone has had to deal with. A bit of a tough year for American.
Yeah, yeah.
You mentioned that Delta has retained its position as the leader in North America. What do you think is different about Delta that they continue to show that level of consistency year after year after year?
Delta have been getting this right for many, many years now, Henry, and winning and that high performance has become a habit. And we always say the same thing about any airline that's consistently winning and consistently seeing improvements. We strongly believe it boils down to three things. The first one is it starts at the top, the culture that's set at the top. We know that the on-time performance and winning this is something which is very dear to the exec team within Delta. And that's something that permeates across through the whole organization. So that high performance culture is definitely in there. We also see continually the winners have strong partnerships, particularly with airfields and with their catering providers, their ground handling, et cetera, et cetera. We know that the partnership that Delta have with Harteveldt Jackson in Atlanta is strong, and that really, really helps to drive an on-time performance. And then the last thing we often see is investment. Either it's an airline or an airport, they're investing in new equipment, they're investing in the right technology, the right people, data analytics to help understand what's going on. And Delta are one of those organizations that do it. It's something that sits at the heart of their high performance. And so they just get it right. They're a well-run organization.
Jez, Delta has spoken about its investment in maintenance, that it tries to do a lot of proactive maintenance. And I think this is important because they have an awful lot of older aircraft. They've got a huge fleet of Boeing 767s, some of which are 30 plus years old. They're operating 717s. So it's not like they've got a brand new fleet. To what extent do you believe that Delta's approach towards whether it's proactive maintenance or something else, maybe doing so much of its own in-house maintenance, repair, and overhaul work contributes to this?
Well, I think it definitely helps, Henry. And it goes to that macro vision at the top of the business to turn around and say, we are going to deliver an on-time product to our passengers. We're going to build our network around being on time. We're going to build our maintenance around being on time. We'll make sure we've got spare aircraft in the right locations. And again, it's that holistic thing that starts from the exec team. So whether they're doing it in-house or whether it's being planned to be elsewhere, understanding how each of those individual parts fits together with that common purpose of we're going to deliver a high quality product to our customers and our passengers sits at the heart of it.
As amazing as Delta has been, when I looked at the numbers this year, one of the things that really jumped out at me was Spirit Airlines. Spirit's had a very turbulent year coming out of bankruptcy, going back into bankruptcy, reorganization. So much disruption, you might think it would be really difficult to run an on-time operation. How did Spirit hold up?
Scott, I think this is amazing, by the way, and I think it's fair to say that they've had an interesting 2025 with all of their challenges. But despite all the challenges, look, when you look at the results, they've had an excellent performance, really, really good. They finished third out of the US top 10. That's up from 6th in 2024. They improved their on-time performance by 2.78%. They're at 78.8. That improvement of 2.78 was the highest in the North American top 10. And when you look at their completion factor, so they're not cancelling their flights, that completion factor is the highest in the top 10 at 99.5%. So it's less cancellations, more flights arriving on time. Despite all their challenges, they've got to look at this as a win and really take it as a win that they've done well.
And, I think really tremendous for the employees of Spirit. It can't be fun to go through bankruptcy, to be facing, layoffs are coming and pay cuts are coming or whatever. And yet to produce that kind of performance, especially with all the schedule changes, with the aircraft on the ground for engine repairs, everything else, it's really quite remarkable.
It really is quite remarkable that the highest improvement in on-time performance in the whole region is something they should be very proud about and really celebrate with their staff and let their passengers know.
Interesting.
So, Jez, I'd like to broaden the discussion a bit because as important as the U.S. is, it's not the entire industry. I've been spending a lot of time this year in Europe, different conferences and working with different clients. And Europe definitely has a series of challenges, always has, or at least seems to have had for a very, very, very long time. And I'm interested to know how the region held up year over year, 2025 versus 2024, and which airlines are doing the best in dealing with that.
Yeah, Henry. So you're right. Europe has always challenges, strikes. We've got staff shortages. We've had cyber attacks this year, drone incursions, as well as the normal engine groundings and things. It's been quite a challenging environment to operate in. However, in saying that, overall, when we look at the top 10 compared to last year, that average has gone up by over 3%. So we have to say that despite all the challenges, Europe are being able to see it through, which is good. In terms of who won it, the winner this year for the third year in a row was Iberia Express. Now, they built on a strong performance last year, and they've even increased their on-time performance by 24 to 25 by over 4%. So that's an 89% on-time performance, and that's 3% higher than the second place airline. So they've created quite a gap now, which is great. But it's interesting when we look at the numbers. I always look at the top tens. I know that as part of the advisory board, we all spend time looking at the monthly results. We always look to see which airlines coming in and which airlines coming out. When we look at the European category for the end of the year, the top 10 have the most volatility, the most change year on year between the airlines that finished in the top 10 last year and the airlines this year. So we've seen 4 different airlines making it into the top 10. Virgin Atlantic, Turkish, Icelandic Air and Finnair. Sometimes we get 1 or 2 coming in, but to get 4 coming in is I've not seen that before.
Very interesting. One of the things I've always wondered is the impact that Rule 261 has had on European operations. That's the compensation for passenger regulations. It's more than 20 years old, so it sort of predates the awards, I guess. But do you think that has played a role or driven better performance by European airlines?
I think it's probably a factor. I don't think it's the single thing of driving it. We always look at Europe and realise because it doesn't have a single sky, it's really hard to be on time when you're having to go round air traffic control that's on strike or where you don't have enough staff. It's really hard to run an on-time operation in Europe. And so those people that are doing it, Iberia Express, SAS, who finished second, they're navigating that and they've done a great job. But I think it's probably a factor, but I don't think it's the factor that's driving them for high performance.
Yeah. Okay, let's pivot to airports because also part of the equation and huge amount of data you collect on airports. You look at them in 3 separate categories, splitting them into large, medium, and small. Who are the winners there?
We do. We split. We actually changed the categories this year. We used to have a global airport. There was confusion between global and large, and so we've followed 3 very clear guidelines. We have our large airports. That's more than 25 million seats per annum. We've got a medium airport, which is 15 to 25 million seats per annum. And then a small airport is 5 million to 15 million. We don't do the tiny airports because the data is hard to be able to get hold of. And we have to make sure in these categories that we've got 90% coverage of gate departures. Otherwise, they don't make it in. So the large airports, the winner this year is Santiago in Chile. They finished 6th last year. So they've gone from 6th to number 1, which is great. On-time departures this time, not on-time arrivals, have gone up by 4.2% to running a tight operation, and that's up to 87%. So that's great. In the medium airports, the winner is the same as last year. We've got Panama City Tucumán. They finished 1st last year. They finished 1st this year, but they've been able to improve that on-time performance by over 3% to 93%. And when you look at that airport, one of their obviously key partners is Copa. Copa won the Latin American category, as they tend to do most years. that partnership, as I said earlier, an airline working in conjunction with an airport working in conjunction with an airline is absolutely critical to drive on-time departures and on-time arrivals. And so that partnership is working well. So it's Panama City as the medium one. And then the small one is Guayaquil down in Ecuador. Again, they were first last year. Solid performance. They pretty much flat in terms of their OTP, which was 91.47. And again, in the small category, to win something 2 years in a row is great. So congratulations to all three of those in our categories.
There's also, Jez, a platinum award for airports. I'm wondering if you can share how you decide on the criteria for this and tell us which airport won the platinum award for 2025.
Sure. Well, the winner of the Platinum Award in 2025 was Istanbul. And very similar to how this category is only 2 years old. It's only the second time we've awarded it. And very similar to how we look at an airline. We look at the size of the operation. We look at the complexity of the operation. We look at the on-time departures and the improvement in on-time departures. We look at the complexity of the routes. And then again, how they're handling passenger volumes being delayed. So again, that black and white at D14 of you've left on time, you've left late, we put into the algorithm. We also look at D30. We also look to see, so how many people have been affected by the changes in delays. So we put that in. They had a terrific one. OT departures is up 4.44% year on year. They're managing almost 500,000 flights. And I think they were voted, I think they've just been recognised as the most connected airport in the world, I believe. So they've got over 310 routes which they're working to. It's a huge operation. In Europe, I think it was July last year, they set the record for the highest number of departures within an hour in Europe at 81. So it's an airport which is relatively new, didn't come online that long ago, and it's doing a terrific job. So they are the winner of our Platinum Award for airports this year.
Well, congratulations to all the winners, and congratulations to you, Jez, and everyone at Cirium for putting together yet another great report, a report that I think has a lot of impact in the business. So thrilled to be part of it, and thrilled to hear the results from you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your contributions, both of you. We appreciate you having you on the advisory board. Thank you.
Jez, it's a pleasure to be on the board. I have one last question for you. Every year, you share with the board what the airlines do after the results have been announced. And we see airlines painting, the winning airlines will paint that they have won whatever the award is on the side of at least one of their aircraft. They do stickers at the boarding doors. They may do pins for their employees to wear. They have signs in their gates or ticket counters in the lounges or other things like that. Does that take you by surprise what a big deal it is for the airlines to win these on-time annual performance awards?
That's a really great question, Henry. It never ceases to amaze me how much these awards mean to particularly the employee groups, the staff, the people that actually make on-time performance happen. And it's not a small department in an airline or an airport. It's the whole airline or the whole airport working together to deliver these results. So when they do win, and as I said, typically the winning margins at the top of the categories are fractions of percentages. When they do win, they quite rightly want to share it, not just with their staff, but also with their passengers and the people they fly with, and say, look, we know you've got a choice. Typically, when we look at air travel, in the majority of places, we can choose which airline we fly with, or we could probably go to another airport. And we might take price as a factor, and we might take convenience as a factor. More and more, people want to make sure they turn up on time. They don't want to miss a connection. They don't want to miss a business meeting. They certainly don't want to eat into their leisure time. And so being an airline or an airport that gets them there on time is something to be shouted about. So we absolutely love it, and we actively support them in any way we can in getting that message out to their customers.
Great.
So interesting, so fascinating. I do think there's a large cultural component to on-time performance at companies. And, just what you were talking about, celebrating it with employees or badges or pins or things that affects the culture. Conversely, I think there's a cultural element to delays and cancellations. Employees just get used to it. It's the routine, and it's hard to break that cycle. So kudos to you for helping airlines sustain their good performance.
Thank you.
All right. We look forward to more from Cirium throughout the year and next year's performance awards as well. Jess, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
And we'll be right back with more on Airlines Confidential.
Promotional support provided by the Ultimate AvGeek website, thearchive.net. A vast collection of airline memorabilia, timetables, route maps, rare cabin and airport photos, special flights, and more. All at thearchive.net, the hub of air transport history.
Thanks again to Jez. Okay, in the mailbag this week, Larry from Chapel Hill, North Carolina, raises an important issue that I should have addressed long ago. Larry says, Scott, first, I really do enjoy your podcast, but I think you have a conflict of interest going on right now. The Pratt & Whitney engine issues are a huge story now, and you are not covering it as the important story it is. I'm afraid it is because Pratt & Whitney is a sponsor. Please say it ain't so, Joe. Well, Larry, it ain't so. I want to address three aspects of this. First, the news. This has been an ongoing story for several years now. We addressed it far more often when it was newer. We haven't said as much about it lately because it's not exactly new news. That said, we mentioned it last week when discussing Frontier's aircraft utilization issues, for example. But, Larry's correct, I think. We should talk about it more. But it's an issue that is well known and one that Pratt & Whitney has been fairly transparent about in terms of the current number of aircraft on the ground, et cetera. The number right now is more than 800. That's a huge number. The impact is huge, of course. But it's also come at a time when airlines have been reducing capacity, at least in the U.S., and Pratt has been pretty clear that it is compensating airlines for the groundings. So the impact on many carriers may not be that severe, at least financially. It also comes at a time when other problems have affected fleets, such as Boeing's delivery woes and aircraft certification delays, supply chain issues at Airbus. We've certainly talked about Boeing and all of that and continue to do so. I understand the point, but rest assured, we are not shying away from the news. Second, and I think this is really important, Pratt & Whitney, I have to say, and I should have said this a lot earlier, we have never heard from Pratt on this and never had any pressure or mention or threat, anything regarding the sponsorship. No influence at all. And I think Pratt has been supportive of us because it wants to support the industry and be seen as a responsible partner even through tough times. I'm very glad that we haven't had any pressure from them. The company just renewed its sponsorship for this year, and the only change was in its message. Listeners may have noticed. The message now focuses on parent company RTX, which includes Collins and Raytheon, along with Pratt & Whitney, rather than just being a Pratt & Whitney mention. Anyway, I'm grateful and appreciative that RTX has supported us without any strings attached at all. And third, I want to be very clear with listeners that I would never tolerate any strings attached. I've had many instances of companies unhappy with my reporting through my career and all kinds of threats and accusations along the way. I've also been fortunate to work for news organizations that backed me to the hilt as long as my reporting was correct. And at the end of the day, most every executive or transportation secretary or whoever I've dealt with has understood why something had to be reported. And if they were treated fairly and responsibly, they respected you. All that is to say, I wouldn't hesitate to talk about a sponsor's problems. We have and we will. The most sacred thing in this is the trust listeners place in us. And that's far more valuable than any single sponsorship. Let me just add that we aren't doing this podcast to make money. It's not a job for any of us. It's a passion. It's a joy. It's fun. And we hope it's appreciated. We're not chasing clicks and downloads and contracts. We do this because we want to do it. I've had entrepreneurs and private equity people and others say, you should really be doing this to increase your numbers or that, and we can monetize it. And we just aren't interested in that. Ben Baldanza started this to educate and inform and maybe entertain. And that's what we try to continue. So sponsorships are great and important because they do pay the bills. There are costs to professionally putting this out to you for free on all the many platforms that it is available on for free. I think sponsorships have been effective for our sponsors, which is great. I hope that is the case, but that's not why we do this. So, Larry, I hope that helps, and my apologies to all of you for not addressing this earlier. Anything I should add, Henry?
I think you covered it, Scott.
Okay. All right, that's all for another edition of Airlines Confidential as we launch into another year. Henry, thanks so much for being part of it. Thanks again to Jez Bowen, and look forward to talking many times again in 2026.
Thank you, Scott. And to everyone, again, my wishes for a healthy, happy, and successful new year. May it be a year of peace. May it be a good year for the airline and aviation industries, and a year of more on-time flights than we have seen in the past as well. So long.
This podcast is produced by Mass Media. Info@massmedia.net.